Welcome to Crossing Lines. I'm your host, Bianca Porras. In this episode, Valeria details her experience as an immigrant in the United States and how it has pivoted her life into a completely different direction than what she had hoped for.
Do you talk to your caseworker? I remember you should.
Follow Joanna on Instagram, and she kind of just checks in on me here and there. I just try to keep myself educated on my own, but I haven't kept in contact with her about how my current legal status could affect me. All I think about mainly is the racial profiling that is currently happening.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Okay, so you were detained right at 13 in Florida. Now, your experience there, what was it like? You were there by yourself, correct? If you want to talk about it, we can.
Yeah.
Just, overall, generally, they treat you okay? Were you able to get, health access, those kind of things?
So this is something that has been really hard for me to grapple with because, at the time that I was detained, Obama was still our president. And while immigration was a topic that presidency really heavily focused on, Obama had mass deportations as well. There was a very humane aspect to it that we do not see with our current president or in his term prior.
Because the people that were detained got due process.
Correct. I had a due process.
Okay.
So when I didn't illegally cross the border, I came to the United States with a visa, which is the most common way that people immigrate into this country. They overstay their tourist visas. I was fleeing political violence in my home country. So it was essentially a plan orchestrated by my parents to get me away from political violence. I was a child. I had no say in what was to come of my life. So my parents send me back shortly after I've just been in the United States. I left to Honduras thinking that, okay, I was going to go back to my life and I would get to live with my parents again. And then my grandmother was murdered because of gang violence. And I'm retreating to the United States, but I have a tourist visa. As soon as I land in Miami, Border Customs stops me, pulls me from my flight, and essentially brings me into questioning. No representative at the time. I had no language barrier because I was bilingual at the time. And they're essentially just asking me very thorough questions about why was I returning to the States so quickly. And I tried to keep up as much as I could and answer the questions as honestly as I could. But they eventually found out that I was here in the United States going to school and that I was not here on a tourist visa. When they pulled my suitcase from the plane, against my family's wishes, I brought my middle school agenda with me to be able to show my parents what my life was like in America. And I could show that I was doing something productive while I was away from my family. And when they pulled the Sierra Vista agenda, that's when they realized she's going to school here. And that is when my due process started. They revoked my passport. I never saw it again. They detained me in the airport overnight, a dark, cold room. The AC was blasting. At least I had my carry-on with me and I was able to pile on as many layers of clothing as I could. And the next morning, they sat me down for maybe 3 hours, just going over legal paperwork and explaining what the process was going to be like. I didn't understand any of it. I was just signing my name. I don't know what I was signing. They gave me breakfast and then they handcuffed me and they put me in the back of a patrol car and they brought me to a children's center. This was a detention center only for children under the age of 18, but it looked like a group home. It was essentially what looked like dorms. There was a common area where all of the girls could hang out. There was community bathrooms. There was a washer and dryer. We had educated, certified, qualified teachers look over us at all hours of the day. We had scheduled meal periods, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We would get a snack. I even got vaccinated while I was at the detention center. They made sure that my vaccines were up to date. So it was a lot different than what I see on the news. And I think I've internalized that and almost made myself believe that I am not a real immigrant because my process was so calm. I wasn't sleeping on the floor. I shared a room with someone, but I had my own bed. I had my own closet. I had access to toiletries and clean towels and clean sheets all the time. Probably the hardest part was the emotional aspect of it. Again, it was a 5-minute phone call and it was timed. And it was if my parents could get through on that landline to be able to talk to me. And it was just every night at 7 p.m., there was a line that formed on the phones to see whose name would get called and who was up next on the phone. But it truly was a due process. It was as humane as it could be.
It was fair and just.
Yeah. For a child, I think so, yes.
How are your parents feeling? They can't visit, right?
So my parents have, surprisingly, against my own advice, Alejandra and my dad, my older sister, came to visit me while I was in Eugene, and they stayed with me for a month. But again, it was like we felt no fear in Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah, because it's a very
It's
blue. It's a blue state.
a state. There is a lot of white wokeness, let's say.
Leftist.
A lot of people that wanted to make room for immigrants, but were, at least in my own personal experience, a little bit ignorant. Being Hispanic in Oregon is different than being Hispanic in California. So even when I tried to find community in those spaces, I couldn't. But my my sister and my dad felt comfortable visiting me in Eugene. And my mother visited me within the same year. She helped me move from Eugene to LA just because it was a lot to coordinate the move while I was still working full time. And so we drove from Eugene to LA. And my mom was with us in Eugene for 3 weeks. And she was here in LA for a month after, once we had already gotten here. I think to them, they live in this different world, almost as if because they're not overstaying their visas and because they go to the consulate, the American embassy, and they're petitioning for a visa, they're like, we're doing everything the proper way. So there is no need for fear for us to not come see you kids. I think also if they did have any fear, I don't know of it just because we've lived so much of our lives separate from each other. I haven't lived with my parents since I was 13 years old. So same, I think they take the risks just to have the chance to spend time with us. So if they had any fear, I wouldn't.
That's crazy that they did. But
Yeah.
you can kind of see where they're coming from, right? They're not doing anything wrong. They're leaving when they're supposed to.
Yeah, they're not
Right.
overstaying their visas.
But as their daughter, you
Well, I told them not
you're
to come.
you're
I was like,
because of
what
what
are you
happened.
guys doing? Exactly. I was like, right now is a god awful time for you guys to be here. Like, what are you doing? And also just because that was the way that I got, I was legal. I had a visa. I was just taking a connecting flight in Florida and I got detained. So in my head, it's like, it doesn't matter if you have a visa, like something could happen to you. And again, I think they just take the risks because they need to see their children. They've missed major milestones in their lives.
That's the more upsetting part of being an immigrant.
Yeah. Again, even now in my 20s, the hardships that I had growing up have followed me into my 20s and into my adulthood. And they are the same reasons. Just like when I was in middle school and in high school, nobody wanted to be my friend because I was the kid who wasn't allowed to have a phone, wasn't allowed to hang out after school. So nobody thought that I was worth the time befriending. And now in my adulthood, it was like I was the mother to my younger brother and I was the provider for him. And I'm the provider for my parents back home. Like the shitty amount of money that I make, I am supposed to stretch for myself, Gabriel, my parents back home. And so when I was going to UCLA and I moved into college, my aunt purposefully sent me to UCLA without my ID, without my social security card, and she purposefully did not renew my work permit. So I went to UCLA fully undocumented, like nothing. It's like I didn't exist practically. And so for that to have set the tone for what my college experience was going to be like, it was the same thing that happened to me in middle school and high school replicated into my adulthood. I was struggling so hard. I literally don't have an ID to even show who the I am. I don't have a bank account to my name. I didn't even know my social security number off the top of my head. Like I had nothing. And so that translated into like adulthood.
Valeria and her brother are still finding their footing in the world today, but despite the setbacks they have faced throughout their lives and the current political climate that threatens to uproot the life they have built in the United States, both continue to persevere. Thanks for listening to Crossing Lines. I'm Bianca Porras. Please help share these stories by hitting the like and subscribe button. Until next time.